they did not lock Patrolling Peacemaker to once per turn. It's just anytime your opponents cast crimes or, commit crimes by casting spells and targeting
Don't
things.
cast crimes.
Don't cast crimes, kid. Hello, folks of the internet, and welcome to another episode of the MTG Thoughtcast. I know what you're thinking. It's September. It's not the end of the year, but we've gotten all of our precons for the year. The rest of the sets coming out don't have any commander precons for them. So that means that the 13 decks that have been released this year, alongside of the booster set releases, are all we've got for the year. So that means that your boys here can talk about what is the best precon that came out in the year 2025. My name is Joseph. I'm one of your hosts here, and across the screen or across your ears is my brother John, ready to talk about some precons as always, I assume. John?
It almost feels weird to even say out loud that like it's precon season and then we're not going to have precon season for about 5 months.
I
You know what I
know,
mean?
man.
Relish this moment, everybody. This is going to be one of our last chances for a while to talk about precon decks. Also,
Yes.
hello, I am John.
Relish it. Mustard, even.
Ooh.
Before we get started, quick shout out to sponsors of the show, Heavy Play. They're our favorite gaming. Oh, John's got his shirt on today. They're our favorite gaming accessories company. They do deck boxes, dice boxes, play mats. They're all magnetic. They're modular. They fold up nice. They've got great finishes. It's excellent. Huge fans of them. You can use code MTG Thoughtcast at checkout for 10% off of your first order, or just go to the link down below. Get you some new Heavy Play merchandise for your bag. Also,
Protect these precons with the best on the market.
this is correct. Yeah. They can you can just magnet your precon to your dice box, to your playmat. It's sick. If you want to join in all of the discussion about what your favorite precons of this year were, or any of our other episodes, play some games, brew some decks, there's one spot on the internet that is the best place to do that, and that is in the MTG Thoughtcast Discord. It's linked down below. It's totally free. We hang out there all the time. Would love to see you there. While you're down there,
Probably live and popping off right now with Spider-Man previews. So if you're not already
absolutely.
taking part in that, swing on by.
Oh, John, you're crushing it today.
Let's go.
While you're down there joining the Discord, if you want to support the channel for totally free, you can just click some of the YouTube buttons down there. We're very close to 1,400 subscribers. We might already have it by the time that the
If we're
episode's
not already
out.
there, yeah.
Exactly. So if you want to be one of those valued subscribers, you can join down below, subscribe, likes, comments. I want to know what your favorite precon this year is. Down below in the comments. I'll be down there responding. All right. That's all of the upkeeping for today's episode of the MTG Thoughtcast. John, we've ranked all of the precons this year, which is half of what came out last year. How many were in 2024, John?
I believe it was also 24 previous year, if I'm not mistaken, because I think every booster set last year came out with precons.
It did. Multiple of them. Some of them 4, some of them 5. It was crazy. This year, we got 13 precon decks alongside some booster releases. And we have a scientific method on how we ranked them to give you our combined scores. And as the MTG Thoughtcast, what is our collective best deck that came out this year? John, do you want to tell the people about the categories and how we scored them?
Right-o. So Joseph and I collectively, we took a browse once again at each of the pre-constructed decks that came out over the course of this year, which, like we had just described about, we know already now for absolutely certain that we told a while back that Spider-Man doesn't have any, but we also learned for definitive that Avatar also doesn't have pre-constructed decks.
Boo, it would have been so good.
I know, come on, 4 nations, 4 decks, come on, Wizards, but
Easy.
we're not here to talk about that. What we are here to talk about is the decks that we have been given, also caveat to this, minus the Secret Layer precon decks, just because those are kind of in their own little, like, bubble of playability and availability and reprint value, whatever, so Those are kind of excluded from what we're talking about today, and there's also potential that they could release more over the course of this year. So,
Yeah.
what we are working with today specifically is the pre-constructed commander decks that got released with the assorted booster products from the beginning of this year up until Edge of Eternities a couple weeks back now. And so, what each of us have done is on a spreadsheet of across 5 different topic types, giving each of these a score of 1 to 10 points. Obviously, 1 being terrible and 10 being the absolute peaks of it. Each of us in each of these categories, 1 to 10, and then that combined score for each deck combined together to reach a grand total of 100 points total. And whichever decks ended up with the highest scores amongst those is what we're going to be talking about today as our top decks of the year. Each deck, like I said, was categorized on a score of 1 to 10 based on 5 different aspects of that deck. The first one being the theme of the deck. What is the deck looking to do? What is its style of play? And is it something neat and cool? This is, as basic as you can go, right? Like, oh, is this a token deck? Here's the theme of it. Is it like walls? Is it energy? Is it lands? Is it any of that kind of stuff? That's the theme of what a deck is. Next up is its new card values, or that is described as like anything that is new within the deck itself. Brand new cards, both like obviously the face commander and any new to commander cards that were printed in those decks. And just like last time, this is not swayed in any way depending on if the deck is an in-universe one or a universe beyond one, because the Final Fantasy PreCons did have more unique new cards in them as compared to the in-universe ones that usually only had like 10. So no swaying factor one way or the other, depending on how many total, as far as like actual cards are in those decks, is the quality of what was printed in those decks cool?
Yeah, I basically went through like what percentage of the new cards did I like. If it was none of them, it would be a 1. If it was all of them, it would be a 10 on it. So it's not like, oh, this many new cards were good in it and you score 1 for each of those. So it was more percentage based for me.
Right. Next up is the deck's replayability factor. This would be if you play this deck on multiple times, how consistent or unique or like other. I don't know. Do you have a better way to describe what this is about,
Yeah,
Joseph? It's
I think
basically
it's a replayability. You could sub in the word complexity for me, which is just how many times are you going to be able to find new ways to win this game? How light is it on its feet? How fun is it to keep replaying this deck? Like, are you going to want to keep bringing it to the table, or are you going to want to take it apart and use it for the sum of its parts rather than as a deck entirely? So, some precons stick together for years because they're so replayable and you keep finding new avenues for it. So this was kind of what I ranked this on, is like, is this a deck that I think that you could play multiple times over and over and keep bringing it back to the table and finding something fresh and unique with it?
excellent. Next up from there is the deck's reprint value. I mean, again, same thing. No real like
Self-explanatory.
sway. Yep, self-explanatory is the cards that were reprinted in it. Do you get good value out of that deck when you purchase that as reprints? But then also B, are the reprints they put in that deck worthwhile to be there? Like, is it just a reprint for the sake of a reprint, or is it an actual collection of cards that synergizes with what the deck theme is looking to do?
Yep, exactly.
And then obviously then lastly, the most kind of a subjective one, I suppose, is just the deck's fun factor. Like,
Yeah,
do you have fun playing this deck? Will your opponents have fun playing against this deck?
yeah.
Right? That
Again,
kind of
pretty
goes
self-explanatory.
that kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with replayability factor, right? Because like obviously if you're not having fun with a deck, you're not going to keep playing it over and over again. But then yeah, just as a whole is like, is the idea of what the deck is trying to do across the previous 4 categories, is that fun?
Yeah. I think a lot of my scores ended up being tied, those two together pretty closely, like you said. But I do think thinking of replayability as complexity, that is a different thing than is it fun. So, like, there's some decks that were like deeply complex this year that weren't necessarily in a fun way. So like you could play this deck over and over and find different ways to win with it, find different avenues for it. But is that a fun thing that you want to keep doing? So that's sort of the difference between the replayability and the fun factor for me.
Correct. So, with those categories in mind, like I said, we each scored them on a basis of 1 to 10, and then our combined scores were added together to give us the top 3 decks. And I believe, Joseph, would you like to start us on what ended up becoming our number 3?
Our definitive number 3 place for the best precon this year comes from Tarkir Dragonstorm, and it is the Sultai Arisen deck. This is the Sultai, as the name would imply. This was blue, black, and green. This is a graveyard deck, but with such a unique angle of caring about cards that are leaving your graveyards. This also brought us the printing of Taval, which is potentially the most busted Sultai commander that they've ever printed. I don't know, John, if you've gotten to play against Taval yet, but oh my goodness, that deck is crazy. And out of the box, it's an unbelievable deck. I think it just sat in such a cool place this year. And yeah, I think it makes total sense that this came in at number 3.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, I see for yourself. I guess we should mention at first, though, that this
Oh,
deck
yes.
with our combined brought it up to a total score of 77. So that's both Joseph and mine's score combined up together
Oh,
to
yeah.
make that grand total of 77. And I guess what it looks like is it came in at third because I see here for you, you have this ranked really, really high.
Yep.
Uh,
This
for
was
my
this was my favorite deck that came out this year. So this was my first place and our combined third place. I gave this a total score of 42 out of 50, which is obviously very, very high. And that's due to the fact that it is so replayable. I mean, I'm a graveyard guy, so like I'm gonna rate this as both replayable and fun. This was tens almost across the board for me. As you
yeah.
can see, I rated it, 42. It also just had some like banger new cards in it. I'm trying to find there was a creature that was printed in this deck that is, Colossal Grave Reaver.
Is
Is
stupid, dude.
That is one of my favorite new cards that got printed this year, period. That's a 6 black and a green for a 7/6 with flying dragon. Whenever this creature enters or attacks, mill 3. And then whenever one or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put one of them onto the battlefield. So this is it's an
Oops.
excellent reanimator target. It's an excellent reanimator engine. It mills, like it fuels itself. It's such a cool card. I'll talk a bit
Mhm.
about the face commander as well. This is Taval the balanced scale, as I mentioned. This is 1 black, blue, and a green for a 4/4 spirit dragon with flying. Whenever it attacks, you mill 3 cards. Then you may return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And then whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, you make a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. So this is just a banger, man. Like it's evasive, it fills your graveyard, it ramps you, it makes you extra bodies. Like this does everything that a Sultai deck wants to be doing, and it does it incredibly efficiently. So I thought this was just a really synergistic pile of Sultai cards that's fun and replayable and has great new cards and has excellent reprint value in it. Like
Mhm.
this is if I was building a Sultai graveyard deck, this is just how I would do it.
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of funny you mention it in that direction because I'm going to go ahead and be on the opposite end of that. And again, this is probably why this deck only ended up in third and not higher because my overall score on this, while still kind of high, my total score ended up being about a 35. That's kind of like right in, like at the very, very low end of what my personal top 3 ended up being.
Sure.
But I had some different scores on my things here. 'Cause like you had just said that it is a playable Sultai value engine. And obviously, like at its core, this is like playing graveyard recursion and that kind of thing. And I guess to me personally, that doesn't lead to tons of like different play pattern that you're looking to
Sure.
do. You're looking to just throw cards into your graveyard and then just by chance, whatever ends up being in there, that's what you get down into play. So that's actually I'm at like a 5 for replayability on this deck,
Sure.
honestly, because like it plays in a very similar way. And then also just like how a lot of graveyard themed decks can be, if you get locked out by a graveyard hate piece. Like that's why this deck has its kind of backup landfall theme that's in here as well. Because like you can
Yeah.
at least be advancing your board a little bit in case you get locked out on your graveyard. But when that kind of thing would happen, now you've lost half the function of what your deck is trying to do. And like that doesn't read super incredible or like very fun to me. Like you'll end up playing a deck like this, and if you were to get locked out by your graveyard, you're like against other people who are doing that all the time, you will not want to be playing that deck much anymore. Or
Fair.
you'll be tweaking it in a way to make sure that you are always have access to your graveyard, which would mean leading into more powerful graveyard recursion pieces. And now you're just playing really strong graveyard combo stuff. And then, the chain continues on from there, leading to food chain. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I still, though, to a credit, I still set this as like a 9 for the fun factor, because the overall idea on what this deck is trying to do when you're able to pop it off is like you get Taval, and then he reanimates lands, and the lands make you creature tokens, and the tokens can then be fueled into other reanimator pieces to get like back the other reanimator targets that you're looking to do in the deck. Like all that is still crazy fun. This deck plays super cool and is a very
Yeah.
fun piece. The theming of it as well, by the way, being both a combination of creature and land recursion in one
Yeah.
package, that's super cool.
I
So
think the
I
the fact
liked.
that Taval cares about just cards leaving your graveyard to make those tokens, I think part of the reason why I gave it such high replayability is that can be anything. That can be the lands that it's recurring. It can be reanimating creatures. So it leans in so many different directions. And I mean, there's good interactions printed into the deck. You've got your Terra Sunder, you've got a Putrefy. So if someone's played like a Rest in Peace or any other graveyard hate pieces, Leyline of the Void, something like that would just completely wreck what you're trying to do. The deck already comes with ways to get around that. And then sometimes the deck is going to play as this like go wide token strategy because of all the things you're
Mhm.
recurring. And sometimes you're going to go super tall by reanimating the big reanimator targets in it. So I
Right.
think that you could sit down with this deck 5 different times and probably find 5 different strategies and angles to win the game. And I think it stays super light on its toes for that reason. Like it's super flexible. So if someone's like going wide as well, you can go just as wide as them to make your blocks as you get in with your flyer. Or if somebody is going super tall with reanimators, you can match that as well and probably reanimate a little bit better than they're doing. So I think this was just like a really great. This was just a love letter to Sultai, is what it was, and that's one of my favorite color
Yep.
combos. So it makes sense that it landed in my first place spot.
Yep. Like I said, I don't hate it.
Yeah,
I think it is a very good deck. It obviously landed at number 3 for a reason. But myself, who's not crazy huge into graveyard, like I said, just that's why my personal end of it gave it a little bit lower of a score. But I would probably say of the 5 that came from the Tarkir collection of 5. I mean, I think all 5 decks were very decent in and of themselves,
bangers.
but I think it stands to reason that the Sultai one probably was the strongest of that
For
collection.
sure. Yep, I agree with that. Which is funny because I almost thought that the Teamer deck was going to slip in there because of Ureni,
Hmm.
but didn't quite make it for either of us.
I guess not. Yeah, that definitely. I think Areni would take the spot as probably the most powerful new commander that came out this year, I would
Definitely.
say.
Oh my
But I
god.
but I think probably because its theme was so narrow of just dragons as just kind of, kindred be kindred.
Yep, exactly. Well, do you want to take us to our second place deck, John?
Let's go. All right. So we move to our number 2 slot of our combined score of 79 points. So a little bit higher than Sultai Arisen. This is our first deck from the Final Fantasy collection, Counter Blitz.
Yes, sir. My boy
Counter Blitz,
Titus.
Bant counters. I always kind of keep going into this deck. I keep wanting to say +1/+1 counters a
Yeah.
theme. And that still definitely is still an attribute that is in this deck as whole. But just man, the concept of what this whole deck is looking to do of taking a variety of things, both the +1/+1 counters and ability counter keywords, and the lore counters from the saga summon enchantment creatures. Plus, I think there's even I think some stuff floating around in here with like stun counter stuff you can do as well, and like proliferating them and moving excess onto other cards so that they have a counter that they're ready to proliferate, and then other new cards that double up the amount of proliferating you're looking to do that care about the number of counters that are being moved onto it or being removed from it for things like card draw and abilities and stuff like that. Just man, it is so cool. It's hard sometimes to kind of make a counters themed deck sound interesting and fun because like the concept of what a counters deck is trying to do is just, oh, you stack a really, really large number of modifiers onto one big boy and go smashing. And that's still a thing you can do in this deck. But being able to utilize all these counters as an external resource for anything that you have down on your battlefield, like, I think more than any deck at all, this is a deck that was constructed in such a way that almost every single card that is in this package is synergistic and compatible with what this style of deck is trying to do.
Yeah, dude, it's nuts. I mean, there's plenty of gameplay that you can go and watch on YouTube. This deck just works. Like
Mhm.
all of the pieces just do something, and like you said, because there's so many different types of counters in it, that just ups the replayability and the fun factor for me. Of you
Yeah.
never know, you might just have like a really summon heavy game, you might have a really stun counter heavy game, you might have a really +1/+1 counter heavy game, and those will all just depend on the cards that you draw. But because of how good Tidus and Yuna are, they just work so well together that it's just going to work no matter what type of counters you are drawing the most of.
Yeah, this deck is the one that ended up with a 10 in my ability factor for exactly that reason. Is like you get down your commander, and if you have drawn heavier into the summon creatures, then you're going to be utilizing moving around and adjusting those lore counters that are on the saga, so you keep them around more long term. If you end up drawing more of the +1/+1 counters side of it, then you'll then be looking to play down more of the things that help you give evasion so that your commander is triggering proliferate more often and that those creatures themselves are getting bigger and bigger. And then if you draw like the ability counter stuff here as well, things like the Luminous Broodmoth and the other stuff it's in
Yeah.
here that moves ability counters around on your board because like like this deck solves a problem with especially the ability counter thing is like those kinds of counters are usually not something worth your time proliferating because an extra ability counter on a creature doesn't give it like a double stack of that ability. But in the case of what Titus is looking to do, you proliferate or end up with an extra flying counter on a creature. Titus then moves that counter over to something else that doesn't already have flying. Then you start proliferating those again, and that gives you more like flying counters to move around to the rest of your board and things like anything else like either vigilance or menace or trample or whatever kind of ability counters that you either come naturally in the deck or ones that you add in after the fact.
Yeah. Everything you just said is dead on. There's just the theme, replayability, and fun factor were the highest scoring for me. This did not make my top 3 for this year. It was just shy of it. But the new cards and the reprint value, I felt like were pretty low in this deck.
As it
So
kind of tends to with universes beyond sometimes a little bit because like we had talked about while these universes beyond decks tend to increase the amount of new cards that they put in there just so that they can showcase more of the world that they are printing the cards
mhm.
into, chances are those new cards can end up just being so narrow towards the theme of the deck that they got printed into that you probably won't see a lot of them outside of that. I feel like the most like universal that came out of this deck in specific is the Owaka Traveling Merchant. He just seems so universally good across a variety of different counters themed deck. He seemed like probably one of the best ones as far as new cards in here, but most everything else, granted, counters as a theme is pretty open-ended and generic. So yeah, you very easily could see some of these new cards in here, but like especially maybe some of those summon creatures, you probably aren't going to see those outside of anything else that isn't utilizing counters or enchantments.
Definitely. I think the summon Yojimbo is the best of the new summons. I've seen that one kind of get some love in other places. That's the one. It's a 4 mana for a 5/5 with vigilance. It's a Saga Samurai. On the first lore counter, it exiles an artifact, enchantment, or tapped creature an opponent controls. On the second and the third lore counters, it's until your next turn, creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each of those. So it's a ghostly prison for 2 turns after exiling an artifact, enchantment, or a tapped creature. And then on the fourth one, which is its last lore counter, you create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of opponents who control a creature with power 4 or greater. So that will likely be make 3 treasures. So it's just a banger. Like it's removal, it's protection, and then it's ramp, all on this 5/5 vigilance. So the I think this was one of the coolest things that the Final Fantasy set brought to us was these summon creatures, these the saga, creatures.
Uh-huh.
And this is just an absolute it's such a good one. In this deck, in other decks as well. Like if you can just keep removing one of its lore counters and putting it somewhere else and then proliferating onto it and you can kind of control what the deck is doing, or sorry, what the summon is doing, this just becomes so flexible. Like if you just get to keep going back to like exile an artifact, enchantment, or tap creature and just
Uh-huh.
keep reoccurring that one and then proliferate in the same turn and get back to like I'm under a ghostly prison as well while I just have this 5/5 that keeps hitting people. That's game ending. Like that is
Yeah.
such a good level of protection.
People tend to forget on how that actually works as far as sagas is concerned. If you take the lore counters and you go backwards, it's not going to re-trigger those chapters.
Hmm.
But if you force a counter forward, that will trigger the counter, or that will trigger the chapter mode that goes forward with it. So if you were to send a counter back in such a way that you do like you said with the Yojimbo one, exile a thing on its top counter, and then during that turn you hit that same saga creature with the proliferate, you then force it up to that chapter 2, like you said, that acts as the ghostly prison thing. Then you use Owaka to send it back to the chapter 1 so that when it naturally gets its next counter on the next turn, you're going back to the ghostly prison one, and then you send the counter backwards again.
Well, like we said, this is our second place deck for the year. John, where did this one sit for you in your individual list?
It actually fell in my personal at a number 2 as well.
Oh, interesting.
I had a total of 40 points scored into this one. Like I said, with actually my only 10 of my list actually in the
Whoa.
replayability.
I like that, man. Yeah, this one sat at 39. And for reference, my third place deck was 40. So this was literally just shy of making my top three. I do think that the Bant counters thing is a little played out at this point. If you remember, or you want to go back and watch our 2024 best precon, Bumbleflower made it for us, which is kind of a Bant counters deck. And then we
It's
did.
Bumbleflower uses its counters to actually actively win the game while being a theme around being like group hug control. Whereas this deck is going double down in on using its counters, and not only using its counters in a way that helps you end the game, but using them as an external resource. Like I said, with the ability to proliferate and move normally counters that don't have an application when you double them up really high.
For sure. Yeah, and I think this deck similarly is almost infinitely replayable for that reason. Like even just us, you could pick a card from this list and just go through and figure out all the different ways that it could play out based on different proliferation techniques and removing counters and all these things, all of which this deck is unbelievably good at. So
Yeah.
I think this I totally agree with this being our second place deck for the year of 2025.
But that leads us into number 1,
Oh
which
yeah, I think
I bet you'd be excited to talk about this.
I am. I think we've spent enough time leading up to answer the question that was in the title of the video. What is the best deck of 2025? The best precon that's been put out according to the MTG Thoughtcast is Counter Intelligence. Yes, this
Woo!
comes to us from Edge of Eternities. This was one of the two decks that released alongside that set. These were the decks that were led by spacecrafts, which I think, have you landed in a cool spot with spacecrafts as commanders? Because I certainly have. I think it's so neat.
It is cool. I think it's very neat. I personally I haven't played against this deck quite yet, but going through and like seeing gameplay on how it works out, and watching somebody else do a build around this as well. It's just like, yeah, the concept of basically your commander, the thing that you are looking to do is on a non-creature permanent, makes it harder to just instantly remove, and then you could just kind of play around it in whatever is most optimal for you to have it become a creature. That's sick. That's very cool.
Yes, in Spirit flagship vessel is blue, red, and a white for a legendary spacecraft. So it has the station mechanic, which you can tap a creature at sorcery speed to put charge counters equal to that creature's power onto Inspirit. And then when it has one or more charge counters, it gains at the beginning of combat on your turn, put your choice of a +1/+1 counter or two charge counters on another target artifact. And then when it has 8 or more charge counters on it, it gains flying, The 5/5 stat line and other artifacts you control have hexproof and indestructible. That is a heater of some lines on this card. And it just is so easy to get up because the deck is a proliferate deck. Like it's a charge counter proliferate deck. So getting it to either +1 or 8+ is just so easy to do here. And if you were in the camp of not wanting to play in Spirit as the main, you could play Kilo, which is blue, red, and a white for a 3/3 robot artificer. It's got haste, and whenever it becomes tapped, proliferate. Oh boy.
Good.
I don't know if
This
you
is
played
so
against
good.
Kilo, John, but it is cracked, dude. He
Kilo
goes
is so cool.
crazy. There's so many, like, it accidentally goes infinite with a ham sandwich. Like, it's so easy to just tap and untap him and make extra mana as you're doing that. Like, you've got your freed from the reels. Like, that's not in the deck, but like, man, the ability to take this and just turn it into like Kilo infinite engine dot deck is so easy. But in this deck, which just cares about playing charge counters and cares about putting counters on things, he just becomes an insane proliferate outlet. Because if you think about like Thrumming Bird or Grateful Apparition that both proliferate on damage, you have to hit somebody with those.
Yep.
Kilo only requires being tapped, which again, with the spacecrafts and some of the other cards that are in the deck, it's just really easy to do that without forcing him to attack. So you can keep him protected, you can keep him safe, and then just keep tapping him down to keep proliferating all of your stuff.
Yep.
Um, I also definitely felt like the new cards in this deck were amazing. There was like none that I didn't love. This was nearly a perfect 10 of new cards for me, both that were unbelievable in this deck on their own, and then also just really inspiring to put into other things.
Yeah, and I definitely know that has an aspect to play with the fact that this deck at its core is being an artifact deck that is themed around basically charge counters. And some of the most powerful cards of our game are considered artifacts. So the diverseness that any of these could go into, like let's look at like one of our favorites as far as the new ones that was in here, the patrolling peacemaker. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
what a card, dude.
Like, man, you can take a card like this and throw it almost anywhere, and it's going to have a good use.
Yes.
He's a 3 mana. He comes in with 2 counters, and when an opponent commits a crime, you proliferate. That's useful in Planeswalker decks. That's useful in counters decks. That's useful. You could play this in an artifact shell that is using its like if you have white again, like what this deck is trying to do. You can do this in a deck that cares about playing control. You can care about this if you care about soldiers because this is a
Yes.
soldier. Like almost every single one of these new cards is useful in some capacity, either inside this deck where it comes from or placed into some different shell of some capacity. And that is the very good marks of a new card design. If you can take of its pieces and apply them to other styles of builds.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you this, they did not need to make this a 0/0 that comes in with 2 counters. If it just was a 2/2 on its own, didn't have any counter synergy, this still would be an unbelievably playable card. But the fact that it can proliferate onto itself immediately and grow into this massive threat on its own just by your opponents targeting things. Targeting anything that their opponents control. Just if they play a counter spell, you proliferate. They untap, they tap something of your opponents, you proliferate. Like if they exile your opponent's graveyard, you proliferate. Like this is nuts, dude. This is
Is somebody else sitting with a blood artist who targets an opponent to drain? Blood artist,
oh
proliferate.
my
Blood artist,
god.
proliferate.
So good. Yeah, I think I said this when we were doing the precon review for this deck, which you can obviously go back and watch any of our previous precon reviews further back on our channel if you want to see us go
I will
in
have a
depth.
playlist in the description of this video covering every 2025 precon review we've done if you're interested to check out the full catalog.
Absolutely. So in the precon review for this deck, I mentioned that this is the best proliferate engine that they've ever printed, and I stand by that today. Granted, that was only a few months ago, so it's not a ton of time has not passed since then. But I've not encountered anything that proliferates more than once per turn. Because even the vanishing whale, whatever it's called, it
Dreamtide
only
Whale.
Dreamtide Whale proliferates at a really high rate, and it still is only once per turn. They did not lock Patrolling Peacemaker to once per turn. It's just anytime your opponents cast crimes, or, commit crimes by casting spells and targeting
Don't
things.
cast crimes.
Don't cast crimes, kid. But yeah, I mean, that's just one of the new cards in the deck. I think that both of the commanders are unbelievably good. There's just the reprint value is pretty high. Like this is a good deck as far as building an artifact deck goes. This is a great deck for lands. If you're doing a Jeskai deck, there's just some really great reprints in the land slot. This also, the Edge of Eternities brought us the printing of new lands into the format with the let me see if I get this right, the cycling lands, the cycling dual typed lands, and the ones that require 2 basic lands and come in tapped.
Correct. Yep. I think
Nice. New, excellent proliferate cards. The reprints are really good. This is just a deck that like works unbelievably well out of the box. So super high replayability. Super. I mean, I love artifacts. I love charge counters. So this deck is really fun to me. I think you're gonna find some really interesting ways to win the game, including a I win the game card that's just in the deck, right? It's
yeah,
the
the Darksteel reactor, if I'm
yes.
not mistaken.
Yep, Darksteel
Uh
Reactor, 4 mana artifact. It's indestructible. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on it, and then when this artifact has 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. So if you just find some way to keep dumping charge counters on it,
right.
when you get to 20,
I love that that's not an upkeep trigger. It's just
no,
the moment it has 20 counters on it, you win.
exactly. Yep. So super, super great there. I also think long range sensor is one of my new favorite cards that was printed in this. This was
Your do nothing artifact.
Oh, I love it. 2 in red for an artifact. Whenever you attack a player, you put a charge counter on this artifact, and then you just pay 1 mana, 1 generic mana, remove 2 charge counters from this artifact to discover 4. I love discovery. I love charge counters. I love artifacts that sit there and do nothing. So this is peak Joseph card.
Yeah.
This deck sat at my number 2 place. As I mentioned, the Sultai Arisen deck was my number 1 for the year. This was, I think, 1 point shy of tying it. But man, this is such a banger of a deck.
It was my number 1. Again, for under the same circumstances, 1 point above Counter Blitz for me. But this sat at my number 1 for the year.
For sure.
Because
Just so good.
it's so open-ended. This is what I like what to see in a deck. I like the decks that still can pull together a cool, concise theming and fun gameplay strategy that still requires some thought, and like you play this deck like a puzzle. You know what I mean? You figure out, where do these artifacts come into play together? Where do I put their charge counters? How do I build this engine in a way that drives the game forward to a victory? But then long term, after a deck like this, let's say you've played it out of the box as is and you're ready to start making your own modifications to it, or you're ready to start taking its pieces out and dumping those things into other decks that you're already playing. A deck like this, with just so on the nose available, like new cards and its reprint cards and its theme, and like you said, like a cool mana base that is able to go and slot into a different deck. Just artifacts as a whole have diverseness amongst every kind of gameplay. Every deck needs good mana rocks. Every deck needs some good things to help you, like draw extra cards or gain you extra mana based on like the counters that are on them or how they play out or whatever. And this deck was just filled with all kinds of great pieces that you see in a variety of different shells, you know? People play things like Joyra Weatherlight Captain in a variety of different historic style themes. Emery Lurker of the Lock is a very popular, like, competitive commander
Oh my
style
god,
thing.
yeah.
You know? Tezzeret's Gambit is a great card draw spell that plays in a variety of different counters of style things, but then
For
also
sure.
just playable staple things that all kinds of different decks use, like Swan Song and Chaos Warp and Steel Overseer and a Crystalline Crawler, Chrome Host Seed Shark, all these kinds of things. You
For
see
sure.
these cards A lot of places. They're universally good outside of just what this deck is looking to do. And to me, that rings true of a good mark of a precon is you get something fun, exciting, and thought-provoking in the package as you buy it, but then also gives you a sweet collection of pieces to spread out amongst anything you enjoy playing.
Absolutely. I think the only reason that this didn't make my number one deck this year, the monetary value of the reprints and new cards is pretty low because it's niche. What I'm looking at right now is if you wanted to build this deck off of TCG Player, just buying the pieces for it, it would cost like $60. So it's nearly about retail to where you could either just buy the deck outright or buy the reprints from it. You're not getting like extra value for your money off of that, which does play into whether I like a deck, a precon or not. And then I do have the fun factor pulled a little farther away from 10. I've got it about a 7 of fun because it's a real solitaire deck. Like you've got to be in for that, and your opponents have to be in for that. I think there will be some salty games where your opponents are like, okay, it's still your turn, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna proliferate. Man, this requires so many extra game pieces too. Like you got to bring like if you buy this, you might as well just buy one of those little cubes of the Chessex mini die as well, just so that because you're going to use all of them in this. You might use 20 +1/+1 counters to account for your different charges and +1s and things like that. And there's also just some like really almost outdated abilities like Sunburst that they brought back in this that just there's a high barrier to entry for a deck like this. I don't think the average new player is going to be able to pick this up and pilot it excellently. But I do think if you sit with it for a while and you like learn all of its different angles and different routes, this is going to be an excellent deck to pilot that could just take you could just not upgrade this, and I think you could find yourself winning tables.
Excellent. Very cool. Very cool. And that brings us to the top 3 that we wanted to share with you all today.
100%. You
The
could
rest
stop
of
the episode here if you want, but if you want the fun stuff, you keep going on here. You could cut straight to the outro and feel great knowing that your boys here at the MTG Thoughtcast have said that the counterintelligence deck is the best precon of 2025. I will stand by that, say it with my whole chest. Now we can get into some of the fun stuff this year.
Oh, let's talk about this. So, before let me go ahead here. Let's start down the line. So, let's bring up what our bottom of the barrel was,
Oh, easy.
which I'm sure if anybody knows how this year has gone as far as the decks are concerned, you probably already know what deck this is going to be. But I guess I don't know. I really wanted to like this one more, but I mean, they continue to want us to like energy, and
Yep.
we're not about it.
We're
Um, uh,
obviously talking about the Living Energy precon that came out with
yeah,
Aether Drift. That was one of the first ones this year, wasn't it?
yep. Living Energy and Eternal Might came out with Aether Drift this year. It scored a combined for two of us 34 points.
Yep. Man,
Which, you
it's
know what? It is too bad because, like, genuinely, okay, I know probably one of the reasons why this one scored incredibly low is like this was another energy precon and another instance of energy that they printed out for us within a year. Because if you remember, Modern Horizons 3 was all about energy as well. There were new cards in all the colors in that booster set, plus the precon that was the Jeskai energy. And in the same, maybe the same year, or
it
maybe
was
with
the same year.
the
Yeah.
same year was the Fallout Jeskai energy deck as well. So we are energy burned out at this point. And
Oh yeah.
and don't mishear me. If you are an energy enjoyer, excellent. You probably have a full suite selection of brand new cards, and this deck definitely had legs to help you pick that up as well. Because what I did like about this deck is that it was the better colors to play energy in. Like, I don't think white offered a lot as far as energy is concerned. Energy as a game mechanic really focused between like the teamer colors, which is what this deck's colors were.
Yeah. Well, that's what everyone was upset about at the two Jeskai Energy precons was that in the original Kaladesh block, energy was a Timmer. Like it was in green, blue, and red. So for them to completely exclude green for their like energy precons for the year was just upsetting. Like it was a complete miss from a like, well, I'm sitting on all of these like gruel energy cards from Kaladesh that I can't play in these like new energy decks. And you know, if you've played any amount of modern or legacy or any of that, you know that like Boros energy has become an absolute menace. They had to ban some cards from it. It was so good in Modern Horizons. So it just pulled like the original Kaladesh block energy lovers in a direction that they didn't want to go. So this deck in Aether Drift felt like a return to form, and it was just another miss from them on
Yeah.
energy because it came off of the heels of, oh my god, we made energy too strong in Modern Horizons
Here's
3, so
another one.
we have to tone it back. So it was just a like
Yeah.
very very low power deck. Like I going through it, like obviously, you know, any deck could win at a table depending on the circumstances. This just doesn't feel like a deck that could win easily. I think this requires a lot of extra work, and energy on its own just requires a ton of upkeeping, and like, you know, you have an extra resource to manage now with energy and all these things. So it's just like, man, it's just forcing you to do so many different and weird things, and it's like sort of playing like a tokens deck because the Sahili that's in the deck is cool. It sort of is a weird version of Mishra from Brothers War
Uh-huh.
because it was 4 mana for a 4/4. Whenever you cast an artificer or artifact spell, you get an energy. That's good. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, you could pay 3 energy to make a token that's a copy of a permanent, which is cool. Except it's a 5/5 artifact creature in addition to its other types. It gains haste, and you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So this had very similar like artifact combo opportunities as the Mishra did. It's just in green instead of black, which is worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were trying to do too many different things with it, all while appeasing the original enjoyers of energy after having sort of ruined energy as an archetype with Modern Horizons. So it felt so haphazard and thrown together.
Yeah, like I said, it's too bad. I really want to enjoy it someday, and I feel like if I ever was in the mood to try and build something with energy, this deck direction probably would be the way I go with it, but as it stands, it still is a very unpopular, unliked mechanic, and that puts that deck, unfortunately, in our bottom of the barrel for this year. Outside of then that one, I know you and I, when we were just talking about our collective top three, the ones that we scored together, neither of us brought up about our individual number three. I don't think. I don't.
Yeah,
Did you? Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't.
because you didn't talk about yours either. Yeah, so I want to start with mine real quick. So,
Yeah,
as I had mentioned, my number for our personal scores, again, which was 1 out of 50 based on what we scored as well. And our spreadsheet, by the way, for all of these scores, if you're interested, that link will also be in the description of whatever podcast source you are listening to here. So you can find our Commander PreCons 2025 playlist alongside our score sheets if you're interested. Check out and see what we did. But I told you about this. My number one was the counterintelligence, and my number two was counter blitz. My number three ended up being Limit Break, actually, from
Limit
Final
Break.
Fantasy. Yeah, I really liked it. I am an equipments enjoyer, so that's
Yep.
probably played a little bit of the bias in that there as to like why this scored really well. Kind of as a whole, it was very, I would call average across the board, being like the highest aspect of this deck. I felt like was its overall like its reprints, because for the same logic as like what the counter intelligence one was like, is that equipment, generally speaking, are all like colorless. And the ones that they included in here, again, were also some like standout commander all stars that you could pull them from this list here and apply them to almost anything you were looking to play, right? Stuff like Champion's Helm is fantastic in almost any deck because everybody has a legendary that they are usually using as their commander of some capacity. Then you also have standout all-star commander things that work incredibly well even outside of dedicated equipment strategies, things like Colossus Hammer and the Conqueror's Flail, Darksteel Plate, Lightning Greaves, Skull Clamp, Sword of the Animus, Trailblazer's Boots. all these kinds of things, Mask of Memory, Inspiring Statuary, Hero's Blade, all this stuff, all of these play very, very popular and very, very fun in an assortment of different builds, not necessarily just equipment based ones. But then, as a whole, what this deck was looking to do with its face commander, Cloud X Soldier, just smash in incredibly fast with the haste, drawing cards, making treasures. Like, you win with commander damage in a deck like this. You don't see that come up as often anymore, especially in precons. And I thought it was very sick. This whole idea. If I wasn't already a dedicated owner of an existing equipment style shell, I probably would have made a deck like this. I probably would have bought this.
Yeah, I think I definitely have some problems with this deck. This scored a 27 for me, so just above average. The biggest issues that I had with it was the difference between what Cloud as a commander wants to do and what the equipment they included in the deck wants to do. So Cloud cares about having base power and toughness 7 or more, base power 7 or greater. And
Yeah.
there's only 2 of the equipment that they included that can get him up to 7 on its own. Most of them are either value ones, like you said, with the Mask of Memory or the Sword of the Animist, things like that, that are either just giving him no power boost or are only giving him some extra utility, maybe +1/+1, +2/+2 even still does not get to 7 power. I would really be looking for equipment that bring Cloud up to 7 to be able to do that. And especially with Tifa, who I think is the stronger of the 2 commanders. Tifa, again, if you go back and watch our precon review for this, you're able to get with if you have 3/7/7s with double strike that are all hitting your opponents, it can give you 6 additional combat phases. But again, it just requires you to have stuff with power and power greater than 7, base power greater than 7. And
Hmm.
there's just like not a ton of really easy ways to do that in this deck. Like you have to multi-equip stuff, which means you only got like one creature that's got base power 7, or you'd have to like be going wide enough to where you're like already kind of winning anyway. So it just felt like both of the commanders were a little win more and just needed more support baked into the deck to make me want it a little bit better.
No, no, that's fair. That's totally fair assessment. And again, that's why, I mean, again, number 3 for myself personally is still incredibly high. Obviously, it didn't break into our combined top 3, but like, I don't know. Again, this is where the aspect of this comes into play is like, we have personal bias towards these
Yeah.
kind of things. I know you don't enjoy equipment strategies as much as I do. And I do agree with your point that, yeah, there were some cards in here that didn't necessarily, like, on their own reach the max value that this commander was looking to do. But like you said, like you're not looking to hit that strive like right out the get go. This is a kind of deck, especially with Cloud coming in with haste. Like, you slam him down in when you've got your board prepped and ready to get him up to that
For
7
sure.
power, smashing in, going immediately. So I don't know. I thought this deck was really, really cool. I maybe if I spot it again, maybe someday in the future, I might pick it up later down the line, but I just really liked what this one was trying to do.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, as a huge fan of Final Fantasy VII now, when we reviewed this deck, I had never played any of the Final Fantasy games, and I'm now on my 4th Final Fantasy game this year, post all of that. So this is one of the reasons why I've now gotten into a series of games that slowly become my favorites. And 7, I played a ton of. Like I went deep on 7. So going through and seeing all of the references to the deck, or references to the game in the deck, is just giving me so much life. It's so much fun. So if anything, I would say this is, if you're a fan of the game, this is just such a love letter to it. As you can see, Aerith on so many of them. You've got the Zac Fair in them from Crisis Core. There's just so much cool stuff going on in here as a fan of the games. But I do think it might have a little trouble sitting at a table correctly.
Mhm. So then talk about what you ended up with at number 3.
Oh, dude, my number 3 was the World Shaper Precon. That was the other Edge of Eternities deck. This is the Jund Landfall / Land Sacrifice deck. Man, I just loved everything that this deck is doing. You know I love Landfall. It's just One of my favorite abilities because it rewards you for something that the game does not typically reward you for. It's like you have to play lands in your deck, but playing a landfall deck means you get to play lands in your deck. So anything that can encourage you to play 40 plus lands in a deck just means that you're going to have such a consistent deck that isn't going to get mana screwed very often, which this one certainly is not. And you get to just play like cool value lands in addition to ones that produce mana and just have so much utility. It's like you're using every part of the buffalo when you're playing this deck because you get
Hmm.
landfall triggers from them entering, you get sacrifice triggers from them leaving the battlefield, you get to replay them from the graveyard. It's just like, man, you're just sitting with this pile and letting it snowball so much. I think Hearthhall is my favorite commander that got printed this year. Face
It's
commander
very
for
good.
sure. I mean, dude, it's just Shorakai Genesis Engine. Every time I've seen it played, it's just like, oh, this is just Jund Shorakai. Because it's 4 mana for a spacecraft that's got the station mechanic. Similarly, at 2 plus, it gains Shorakai's ability, which is 1 and tapping it. You sacrifice a land, draw 2 cards, and then you may play an additional land this turn. So at base value, if you sacrifice a land and then play an additional one, it becomes this free draw 2 from tapping it because you get rebated for that land that you're putting back into play. And in the best cases, this ends up netting you extra mana, or you get to replay a fetch land from the graveyard with this. Like it's just so good. And then if you want to close out the game at the 8 plus, it becomes a 6/7 with flying, vigilance, and haste. And whenever you sacrifice a land, each opponent loses 2 life. So you just find some way to like sacrifice all of your lands and that wins you the game.
I
Like
want
that's
I want
awesome.
to I want to see this spacecraft at the helm of like a scape shift build. Like
Oh, dude.
that's all it wants to do. It
For
wants to
sure.
get to that 8 charge counters and do like scape shift and some of those red ones that also sacrifice your lands and
Yes.
all that stuff. You got
Well,
black
dude,
as well,
like
so you could play what is God? Oh yeah, God Eternal Bontu's in here too. Yeah,
in the
you could
deck,
just do
dude.
that.
That I mean that this is what like my Rakdos landfall deck wants to do. So they just gave me like a love letter to a deck that I love already.
Hmm.
I also think like I loved the controversy of Planetary Annihilation being printed in this
Oh,
deck.
dude, this card is sick.
I want to talk about it for a second. So Planetary Annihilation, 5 mana for a sorcery. It's in red. Each player chooses 6 lands they control, then sacrifices the rest. And Planetary Annihilation deals 6 damage to each creature. I want to
Yep.
know where you've landed on this. Is this mass land destruction?
No, of course not.
I don't think so either. I think that the discourse has been about
Is
like,
it salty? Probably.
oh
Like,
yeah. But I
this
also
card
think like
slaps, dude.
it's so good, and there's so few ways outside of like mass land destruction to keep like the green decks in check that have gone like turn 2 nature's lore, turn 3 rampant growth, cultivates, all these things that are putting extra lands into play that typically are the safe way to ramp outside of like, oh, if I'm playing my artifact rocks, then I'm, at risk of a Vandal Blast or something. And this sits in the same range as Vandal Blast, except it's a board wipe and then just keeps the green deck down to 6 lands. So you're not removing their ability to play the game. You're just bringing them back to where you are. And again, this is what I love about this Jund landfall deck is that it doesn't go super wide in lands. Like you want to be playing lands, getting a landfall trigger off of them, and then getting rid of that land as quick as possible with the Hearthhall or with Zarl being able to bring them back. Like the new cards that were printed in this, I think were just all absolutely stellar.
I
Um,
love Baloth Prime. That thing is
oh
so stupid.
yes, it's so cool. Scouring Swarm, another excellent new card in the deck. The Horizon Explorer is obviously a favorite of yours because it has your favorite line of text, which is lands you control enter untapped. This
Yep.
allows you to play like gates or towns or whatever enters tapped, or the backside of modal dual face lands that come in untapped. And then whenever you attack a player, create a lander token. That's so good, dude.
Delicious.
It's excellent. I mean, they also like reprinted Korvold into this deck. That is an absolute banger of a sacrifice win con and draw engine. Like this deck has I've seen it win in so many different ways just by outvaluing your opponents by being able to utilize lands 3, 4 times over in different zones.
No, it was a cool one. It didn't really squeak much higher for me. I set a lot of this one again, probably like medium-ish scores, give or take, which those tend to kind of end up being in that realm of like the 32s to 35s as far as the score is concerned. So doesn't quite push them up and above into like top bracket categories, but still a high score, like double the score of Living Energy, right? That's got to be worth something of value
Yes,
there. You
dude.
know what I mean? So
Yeah, man.
so
Um,
I think with finished with talking about those, is there any other decks you wanted to bring up as far as like maybe something that hey didn't quite land in either of our categories but was neat worth talking about that you enjoyed this year?
I was actually just going to wrap up with a quick question for you that I can answer as well of was 2025 a better year for precons than 2024 was? Are we going in a direction that you like? Did you enjoy the majority of the precons that came out this year? Did you like that there was less precons this year than last year? Just give me your like
Some banter
TLDR
about
of
that.
2025.
Um, I mean, I feel like as far as the pre-constructed decks are concerned, I am sad to say that, that Avatar isn't going to have any. That was like the number one thing that I wanted. When I talked about, I think it was a little over a year and a half ago now at this point, when we were talking about like what would be the universes beyond that you want. I nailed Avatar, but I really wanted that to be commander decks because they could focus a full deck around obviously bits and pieces from the show, but also focus it on every single nation and be able to showcase and be like have aspects in the deck that are really tuned and maybe even playable and powerful pieces that are focused around what each bender type and nation of that show was doing. And
Yeah.
so that does make me sad that we are not getting dedicated decks from that deck or from that booster set, excuse me. I also really would have loved to maybe see like a Spider-Man one or two. I think that would have been real sick to maybe have like two of them, maybe like one of them be a heroes
Heroes
deck,
and
one of them be
villains.
a villains deck. Yeah.
Yeah, these
So
were slam dunks.
those would have been very cool to see this year. But so given what we have as far as what was printed, like I think these are great. Like there doesn't to me, a good year of precon decks is when you could go through the entire catalog of what was listed that year and not see anything as far as like thematic overlap. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
could you play all of these decks and they all do something not necessarily radically different, but like would all of these decks play differently? Yes, I would say they can.
Mhm.
Let's take just off of base colors of itself, right? Living Energy and the Teamer Roar were both Teamer, but they both are doing radically different things that you are not going to be playing in a similar headspace no matter which deck you end up playing. You
Yep,
know what I mean?
I agree. I think that having fewer precons a year has allowed them to do better art in the precons, which I really enjoy. We've gotten a lot more like new art. Like, I mean, all of the Final Fantasy decks had complete 100 cards worth of new art for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think their average new card designs and reprint quality has gone up slightly. Because they're condensing it down. And like you said, there's very little overlap. Whereas last year, like we said, we got 2 energy precons. We got 2 different token decks. There was so many different things that we got that were similar that was like, well, I might as well buy that one. And it's why we started doing the precon mashups. Like, it was like,
Yeah.
oh, we can just combine these things together. And we just didn't have as many like mashupable precons this year, which I do think is it's a worse thing as content creators, but it's a good thing overall to the health of the format is more important than some views for us. So I think overall it's in a good spot. I do think that we didn't get anything that was quite at the quality level of like the Bloomborough precons from last year. I think that those are my standard for how good a precon set should be because all 4 of those were completely playable. Were just chock full of good reprints and new cards. And I just
I would even say we haven't even seen anything to the same consistency level than Lost Caverns of Ixalan. I'd
oh my
say that
yeah, that one was
that set
ridiculous
of 4 was standard. That should have been the bar on
for
what a
sure.
set of precons should be.
Yep. But yeah, I think overall the precons were good this year. I think it was maybe a slightly worse year overall than 2024, but it was a good year for precons and it was a good year for Commander. And I'll go ahead and say that. I think to touch on the Universes Beyond thing for a second and just kind of give a pulse check of where I'm at with it. I'm with you where I do think that the trade-off of not getting precons is a worse thing for getting, you know, some IPs that I love and enjoy, like Spider-Man and Avatar. Those are both things that I really enjoy and would have loved to see precons for. Not only just for the sake of being able to have a collection of precons from these IPs, but what it means is that we're getting less new commander cards from these sets, which means that you have to care about the standard booster releases, which are generally going to be lower power than what they're able to do in Commander. So I
Hmm.
would expect to not see the avatar cards impacting Commander as much as I would like to be seeing those for that reason. And like the booster packs are inflated on cost. So it
Yep.
feels a bit like if I'm doing like Hasbro shareholder brain, they're trying to funnel commander players back into standard, is just sort of overall what it feels like. It's like, hey, we've gotten really good commander decks for the last 4 or 5 years, as they've really targeted and cared about commander, and now they're seeing the people step away from standard and they just need us to dip back into it. So they need to see like the play boosters bought a bit more often, the collective boosters bought more often from commander players to try and get some of the high value fetch cards from the set to put in your commander deck. So I would say vote with your wallet, buy singles for these things, and keep telling Wizards that we want more commander products as compared to no precons. Here's all of the inflated standard boosters. So that's where I land with all of that stuff.
Yep.
But I think with all of that, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Let us know in the comments below what your favorite deck of 2025 was, your favorite precon. Did it line up with our top three? Do you have a different top three? Would love to hear from you down below or on our Discord, as mentioned, linked down below as well. If you want to reach out to us and talk even more about precons, you can find us on Blue Sky. That's at MTG Thoughtcast or at Joseph Thoughtcast or at John Thoughtcast. Or you can send me an email at mtgthoughtcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you so soon here on the MTG Thoughtcast.